Let's get into privacy's defender today. It does matter because there's a lot of things happening in blockchain. We'll break it all down for you. I've got a special guest. Let's just jump right into it. I do want to thank our sponsor today, and that is Tangem. Speaking of privacy, self-custody is one of the things you can do in crypto today with a hardware wallet where you can control all of your assets. Very easy to set up over on tangem.com. Works with your phone. This gives you true ownership. No bank, no exchange stands. All of this between you and your funds, you guys now have it all built into a card and a tech that's meant for you. Use our link down below to get some discounts and get going here. I want to showcase a book which is Privacy's Defender. This, of course, is done by Cohn, who is the executive director over at the EFF. And it's her 38-year fight against digital surveillance. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but why this is so important around crypto. Before we bring her in, I want to play a clip where she was on the Jon Stewart show talking about this. Take a look.
We need better options, and people are developing them. I know it's not very big yet, but it's a decentralized place where people can build safe communities for themselves. I think that when you pick censorship as your strategy, you are dealing with, no, that's what you want to do. No. You want to create liability for the company based on things that people say to each other on the network. And what you're doing is you're saying you should make sure that those people can't speak on your network because they're causing harm.
I mean, there are libel laws, there are slander. Isn't that censorship?
Well, I mean, you can always sue the people who are harming you on the platforms. The question is secondary liability. I just want people to be able to leave. I think that the censorship strategy feels really easy, and I worry it's going to backfire.
Yeah. I understand. I think we define censorship slightly differently.
We might.
Social media, to me, is like secondhand smoke sometimes.
The answer isn't to try to take a dictator and make them a better dictator. The answer is to get rid of the dictators and make them less important.
All right, so I like what she had to say. We asked her on the show, and I want to welcome her in. Cohn, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much. That was fun.
So you got a chance to go head-to-head with Jon. And first of all, did he really understand the solution you were trying to present, do you think?
I mean, I think by the time we got to the end, and honestly, the conversation continued after the cameras stopped rolling. And I think at the end, he understood what I was talking about. I just think that there's an effort to try to deal with some of the harms that are happening online that has a very grooved path. And whenever you're trying to convince people that that's not the right path, they think that you don't care about harms at all. Yeah. And so I had to really work hard to get him to recognize that, like, the answer that I think is better for harms is actually significantly more dangerous for the big companies than the one that they're embracing. And it took a while to get him there. I think at the end of the day, what he really wanted was transparency. He's not comfortable with the way that some of the social media algorithms are it's really hard to see how they're working. And I think that's fair. I mean, EFF we're very supportive of more transparency around these kinds of things. And so we found some common ground there. But I the stories about the bad things happening to people online are heart-wrenching, and I have a lot of sympathy for people who want to do something. It's just that between recognizing the harm and actually doing something like that, the devil's in those details, and that's where I live. That's where EFF lives. It's not what do we do in response to it.
Because I think he kind of came back at you on this, and that is kind of the KYC element. Someone having to show who they are, whether it's through a government ID or something of that nature. Would you be for that, or would you be against that in terms of these water cooler type environments, social media?
I mean, I'm against them. And I think there's good reason why you should be worried about that as an approach, this idea that all of us as individuals have to prove who we are in order to participate in public discourse. Yeah. I think that there's lots of places where KYC is something that we would advocate for, but I think this is really dangerous. It's dangerous on a number of levels. One is, of course, they say it's about children, but it means all of us have to be positively identified, or at least try to be positively identified, no matter what we're doing online for a huge swath of things. We know that the people who don't have access to good IDs generally are marginalized people. So we're going to start by making it harder for people who need these communities to participate. And I, we've already seen a lot of data breaches, right? I mean, I think the presumption that you give your identification information to a private company that then, is usually contracting this out and that it's never going to go anywhere else and it's always safe is not one that is consistent with the way that we live. So I think there's a lot of problems with requiring positive identification of individuals in order to participate in any kind of public communication.
The other thing that I look at is kind of the overreach of government. If you look at what the DOJ has been doing around Tornado Cash, this is built around basically a developer that created some code that a bad guy used. That's kind of the core of it. But yet the DOJ is going after them again, even after some of the case had been ruled not necessarily their fault. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a couple of factual questions there. EFFs, we filed briefs on a couple of times in the Tornado Cash cases to point out that merely developing a tool that other people misuse shouldn't be a basis for liability. There has to be significantly more, and we've got serious questions about that. Again, I think people see the harm and they jump to the first thing that gets presented as a way to deal with the harm. I mean, nobody really is a fan of the North Koreans money laundering, a lot of money. And I think from the government's perspective that once they've identified the harm, what they do in response to that harm is far less important. And again, that's kind of where we live. You have to tailor what you're doing in response to the particular harm. And, the question in all of these cases is, if you're just developing code, you shouldn't have any liability. If you're actually participating in illegal transactions, other than developing the code, then that's a whole different thing. And I think that's been lost by the government in those cases. And I think that I hope that, we're starting to see some of the courts recognize that distinction, but not all of them. And I'm troubled by the Storm case.
Yeah, you've been fighting this fight for 38 years, and it does not appear, I'm not saying that you have done a bad job at all. The fact that you're bringing all this to the front of the discourse out there, I think is a good thing. But I look at it and I think, I don't know if surveillance has slowed. If anything, I think it's only accelerated. So do you think this is at some point just going to have to be a line down the middle that says, you are either pro-privacy or you are government, to where which they definitely don't care about privacy. Where do you think that line's gonna go?
I think so. I think if we're going to save our democracy, honestly, I think this is about self-government. We're going to need to exert privacy again, especially vis-a-vis the government. I care about corporate privacy as well, especially since it feeds the government. We know that the number one purchaser of information from data brokers is the government, and the FBI just said they're going to keep doing it. So you can't really think about it as a line between government and private surveillance. But yeah, I think we're going to have to take a hard line against. I think that line goes all the way back to the Constitution. The Fourth Amendment was created to stop mass untargeted surveillance. That's what the general warrants were. That's the basis of the Fourth Amendment. So I think that even if you're a originalist and you think about the history of the country, it's not new to think that we have to do this. But you're right that these fights have gotten harder and harder as this admixture of the government wanting to know everything about everybody, which got supercharged after 9/11, and the companies using mass surveillance as their primary business model. These two things have really combined against us. And then when you add things like AI and the development of these technologies to be a lot easier for a lot more people to use, and you end up with ICE agents using facial recognition on protesters, this is technology that didn't used to be available to, agents on the street. And now is. So I think we're facing an ongoing uphill battle because we have refused to recognize the risks of not protecting privacy in small ways, and now we have to think about protecting them in big ways.
Listen, this fight goes back a long way. I mean, even if you look at predating what happened on social media and you go all the way back into the Clipper chip, era when they were trying to integrate. That's when I was, basically a young developer watching this happening in front of me, which is why I left Silicon Valley, was what I was seeing was the advancement of government overreach happening at that time. Now, I was just on with Warren Davidson just last week. He and I were talking about 702. He hits it right here on this tweet. We talked a little bit about Government Surveillance Reform Act, why Congress must close the data broker loophole you just mentioned a second ago in reference to protect Americans on Section 702. Explain what will happen on April 20th, which is just around the corner here.
I know that people like to call it the data broker loophole, and I think that's fine, but it's actually not. The 702 isn't the mechanism by which data brokers are selling information to the government. It's not happening under, this is lawyerly, but it's not happening under 702. But what 702 does is it authorizes the government to do mass surveillance of Americans by going to the telecommunications companies and our service providers and demanding that they turn over en masse information about us. And one of the things they're doing is tapping into the internet backbone and watching the traffic that goes by and selecting out what they need. And this is the central program that EFF started suing about in 2006, and it's still going on. We've shrunk it. But it's still going on to a lesser degree. That authority to do that is up for renewal on April 20th. That's one thing Congress did, was make it expire. And if it gets renewed, it actually got expanded the last time it was up for renewal. It needs to get contracted, if not go away. And one of the things that needs to happen is that this information is supposed to be collected for national security purposes and used by the NSA to find spies and terrorists. But the FBI has had access to it in ways that we don't understand. We can't control. We can't even count. They won't even give us a number of how many Americans are affected by this. So the loophole that I think we need to close is the FBI shouldn't have access to information that the National Security Agency collects for these narrow purposes. And I think that closing that loophole, which is Senator Wyden has a bill on it, and so do some other people. Closing that loophole is the number one priority for a lot of people, including EFF. I mean, again, I'd like to see the whole thing killed, but short of that, we'll keep chipping away at it. And this is a very big chip. This information, we were told that this information was important to allow the NSA to protect us from terrorists. And now it's being used by the FBI in domestic investigations that have nothing to do with terrorism. And we need to close that off.
Is there a way for an American citizen to actually do a FOIA request on what the government has on you personally?
Not in the context of, I mean, you can for some pieces, but anything that's national security or law enforcement, which is the stuff we're talking to here, have big exceptions in FOIA. So it's worth trying, see what you get. But the FOIA law itself doesn't require the government to turn over information if it is being collected for national security purposes or law enforcement purposes.
Ooh, man, this is not making me feel good, okay?
Sorry, we need to fix this as a policy and a legal matter. Yeah. And we need to build the technologies that support us doing that. I mean, that's one of the promises, I think, of the crypto world, was that we would have a way to, at least on the financial side, but even on non-financial side, we'd have some technological means to help protect information from the government and from bad guys. But we need to see that supported and come to fruition.
Well, we're going to find out, because I think things are going to get very active, especially after clarity, if in fact we get clarity through, because that will set up a lot of companies to develop some new technologies to maybe go in that direction. One thing that's happening on social media, and this is one of the areas that I'm very intrigued with, especially on this move, is that Twitter now is rolling out a new feature that automatically locks accounts the moment that they start posting about crypto. So this is Nikita Bayer, who said that the system is now going to flag accounts with no prior crypto activity that begin promoting tokens, forcing identity verification before further posts. So basically KYC now, if you haven't been ever talking about it before and all of a sudden you found crypto and you start talking about crypto, you're going to get flagged. What do you think about this? Do you think Elon is censoring Twitter right now?
Sure. I mean, that's a censorship.
100%.
That's 100% censorship. I mean, I understand the problem that they're trying to solve. There's a lot of scammy stuff going on in crypto, but it's a very blunt instrument. And this is usually how censorship works. And of course, I think with Twitter, with Musk, you've always got to worry that is he favoring his own technologies?
He's dropping a wallet.
Is there an anti-competitive purpose buried in what might otherwise be something that if somebody who wasn't a player in this space decided to do that? But yeah, I mean, this is why censorship is such a blunt instrument.
Huge.
It's always going to be, not always, but almost always going to be overbroad. And this sounds like it's something that's overbroad. You've got to look at the range of tools that X might have to try to stop scams. I think it's important for, nobody wants to go to a platform that's just full of scams. So
there's
it's okay
plenty of
for them to
tools
take
out there
steps.
that can do
there
most of this
other tools.
for
I don't
you.
know the world well enough to know, but this sounds pretty blunt to me.
Yeah, this is getting to be a problem, I think, in general, because obviously blockchain, to your point, was supposed to kind of solve this. We've already seen that even with stable coins, there's integration now because of the Genius Act where they can actually go in and claw back transactions inside accounts. That's being done by Circle and Tether both. So what do you make of that? When we do go to a digital system and have that government overreach, are you concerned that that is kind of the ultimate surveillance state where they can turn money on and off?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and look, credit cards have always had a version of this, right?
Yeah.
And people's bank accounts get, my friend Rainey Reitman just wrote a book called Transaction Denied that goes over all the ways in which our financial privacy and security is very tenuous right now. And her stories are pretty compelling on this. Why move to a digital thing if we're just going to recreate the exact same problems that led us to do it in the first place? And I think, that doesn't mean that there's no government. I think that that's a bit of that's not probably going to happen. And it's a bit of a misunderstanding. But I also think that, simply creating winners and losers who get to be the ones that get to do things, and everybody, like, again, we had Wall Street for that. We don't need a crypto world just to create a bunch of new bosses who are the same as the old bosses.
I'm going to go through a rapid fire with you on some questions around this. Native zero knowledge upgrades on Ethereum will be kind of the first real defense weapon against surveillance.
I don't know.
Agree?
I can't tell. I like zero knowledge proofs, but them in the in the abstract don't do anything. It has to be embedded in a really good system. So I'm hesitant to just say, oh yeah, once you have zero knowledge, you win.
Yeah, in the middle. What about this one? Privacy will cost extra now, adding to the wealth gap in the U.S.
I mean, I think that's what we're seeing right now, and it's a problem. We need to address it. Poor privacy for poor people is not an answer. I think this is a right, and we need to treat it like a right.
Yeah, absolutely. User data on TikTok is worse off under U.S. corporate control, the Ellisons, than it was under China. What do you think?
I think we just traded one bad for another. We certainly didn't solve the problem.
Yeah, so it's in the middle.
I can't tell. I don't know enough about what was going on with China. Yeah. I don't know about worse, but certainly not better.
Okay, not a good one. Polymarket might be the beginning of the first big mainstream Web3 social media app based on truth.
I think I disagree. I'm not a fan of the idea that markets equals truth.
Why do you think that?
I think that's simplistic.
Isn't that the mindset?
Of predicting what the truth is not the same thing as the truth. I actually think truth exists quite apart from that. And I believe, so, I mean, polymarkets are interesting and they're fun. I just think that the idea that they're everything and that they define truth is too far.
Let's go to this one. Elon will never allow users to move their social graphs out of X.
I hate to say never about Mr. Musk. He does whatever's in his interest in the moment, and he's unpredictable. But I think it's going to be a hard call because that's what he thinks he has. He thinks he has captured people.
Well, and it may get more as we get into the financial system inside X, because that is going to be a big deal. He's luring people in with some pretty outlandish offers, so it will be a big deal. OnlyFans will be forced to go. I think we need
a legislative solution to this. I think we need interoperability. We need to be able to take our social graphs and leave, and we're going to need legislative help to make that happen. We're going to need to be able to stop things like the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act and Terms of Service and Section 1201 that now keep people locked into where they are, and we're going to need to we're going to need policy and technical help, but I think interoperability ought to be the goal for all of these systems, that you can always leave and take your community with you.
Why do you think that federated social media never took hold? I mean, Mastodon, you look at some that have tried this, even if you go into some of the Bitcoin ecosystems out there that have attempted this, they've all kind of fell flat. Even though I know there's a lot of Mastodon servers out there, I'm part of a few of them, but the point is they're not very prolific.
Yeah, I don't think we're done yet. I don't think they failed. I think they're just a slow roll. But I also think that a lot of these communities are not very good at user interface. They're not really good at making something that is useful for people other than them. And I think that I love the technical community. I come from them. I've represented them. But like, you got to be able to speak to people who don't already speak your language. And that's what a good user interface and a good proposition for why you should do this looks like. And I over and over again, and this is from the 90s, I've continued to watch as this community really doesn't do a very good job of making something that is useful to people who don't already believe.
Do you think companies like now OnlyFans will forced to go fully decentralized?
I think that that's a very good option for them. I think they may end up picking that. They may end up picking full identification and blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure which way they're going to go. But I think that's an option that they should consider. It's just problematic. The attacks on, we always see that attacks on sexual material are the first wave of censorship, and the next thing they're talking about terrorists, and the next thing they're talking about,
your bank account.
Child predators. It's the same, it's the same set of boogeyman that are not unreal. There are things we can do, and they're not. I'm not saying they're not harms. I'm just saying they get used to usher in a lot more than the problem requires.
Doubt. Speaking of boogeymans, you got DOGE, Social Security's data leak. Do you think that was overblown and had no real grassroots backlash?
I don't think so. I actually think that's going to be a piece of why we're going to see the midterms maybe go the way that they're going to go. I think it's a really big deal. Honestly, we're suing DOGE over the Office of Personnel Management. I think that those leaks are important. And I think the fact that we can't see the outcome of them right now is making people think that they can just look away and it won't affect them. But privacy matters. And this is a huge privacy issue.
Speaking of privacy, who do you think is a greater personal privacy risk right now, Elon or Elizabeth Warren?
Well, I would pick Elon Musk. I think that Elizabeth Warren is a member of Congress and she needs to get a lot of other people to agree with her before she can do things. She's not just a billionaire who waves a wand and decides. So I actually think that I would rather have somebody who has some checks on them and not just the ability to write checks over any billionaire with regard to my privacy.
And I have seen Warren do some pretty interesting things in Congress. So until she is out of power, I'm going to have to go there. Why doesn't Bernie Sanders support Ethereum or proof of stake or even stablecoin yields? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm not a close enough watcher of Bernie to know. I apologize.
No worries. Ring camera backlash proves privacy has already gone mainstream, but only for cameras.
Well, I won't do the but only part for you, but I do think that the Ring camera backlash indicates that there's a moment now where people are like, okay, this is too far. I think we're going to see backlash. We're starting to see ALPRs, which is another kind of camera, but a very different one, the license plate readers. I think that we're seeing, facial recognition, which again is cameras. I think it's easier for people to understand it, but I think people are starting to look at the way Palantir is being used to, map communities and decide where ICE raids happen. That's location data. That's not cameras. So I think that I'm hopeful that it'll be the first wave of concern that will then lead people to look, pick up the rock and see all the ways in which our privacy is being.
Does the EFF publish any kind of guidelines out there for individuals to kind of protect their privacies? Like, hey, here are some basic things you should do. Can they find that on your site?
We have a set of materials called Surveillance Self-Defense, SSD.
Okay.
And we do a little threat modeling for people. You know, are you a protester? Are you a journalist? Are you somebody going across a border? And then we try to get people into a set of recommendations that match them, because we know that privacy isn't a one size fits all thing. There are certain things that can help a lot of people, but we ask people to kind of think a little bit about what their personal risk is, and then try to provide something that's a little more focused about that risk. But those materials, SSD, are we make available for free, multiple languages. And they're the basis on which, if you've ever been to lots of security trainers in lots of different areas, use our materials as their back end information.
Let's talk about Discord says no images will be stored when face scanning our children. Do you believe them, or cancel Discord?
I mean, you can do it that way. I think that we need to, tell them to put up or shut up in terms of I don't think we should believe them. I think we should require them to show us. But we know that, Apple, for instance, with its face scan, does a lot to try to keep things on device and make it hard for people to use. So it's not impossible to do, but I think that we shouldn't take them at their word.
If there's enough backlash. Yeah, I think there's enough backlash from the community. One thing I have noted too, with teens and Gen Z to a certain extent, they seem to be getting more aware of their privacy issues, even though they are letting so many go.
Well, I think that, again, privacy is about control and it's about power. I think that privacy is about how people with less power get some protection against people who have more power.
More power.
And I think that when you're looking at teens, you will find them protecting their privacy in ways that protect themselves from powerful people around them. Sometimes that's their parents or their teachers first. But, Pew did a survey a little while ago, and they discovered that younger people play more with their privacy settings and know more about their privacy settings than older people.
Interesting.
And so I actually think that we might be wrong in our kids today don't care about privacy thing that we say. I think that they do. They just may not do the same things we might do about it. But as we're entering into a time where the consequences of not having privacy are much more clear and obvious to people than they used to be. And I think we'll see people take more, of all ages, take more steps to protect their privacy. I mean, the number of people I know who now use Signal as opposed to before, where they were like, I don't have anything to hide. And suddenly people are like, maybe I should do this. Like, it's increasing.
Last question is Make America Private Again will be the new Maha in terms of voting power. Do you think that'll be the case?
Oh, I would love it, but I
think
that's great. Dream no small dreams. I think that's a great idea. I'm not a good predictor, but I think it's a good idea.
Well, we're just going to put it in the good idea box then, because I'm in the same camp with you. This is good. I love it. You guys, of course, can find a lot more about the book. Again, I'll just require you to go over and read Cindy's book here, Privacy's Defender. It's a good one. And it's something you should all do. I think especially if you're in the blockchain and the crypto community, you're learning quickly that privacy is so important. So check it out over there. Cindy, thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.
If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.